At 5 a.m., the alarm clock of Isabel Carter erupted with sound, a familiar ritual that marked the start of her weekdays. With a deft touch, she muted the noise, granting herself a precise 3 minutes to gaze at the ceiling of her humble one-bedroom apartment before swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. The morning routine unfolded with precision. 15 minutes for the shower, 10 for makeup, and 5 for the clothes she had meticulously arranged the night before. At 5:45, she stepped out the door, travel mug in hand, giving a nod to the familiar night security guard who was wrapping up his shift just as she was starting hers. The subway was serene at this hour, providing her the opportunity to go over the day's agenda for Jonathan Mercer, CEO of Mercer Enterprises. Her phone vibrated softly. A piece penned by Jonathan. Please revise the Spencer contract before 9 a.m. Observe the inconsistencies in Section 4. Isabel let out a weary breath. She had already gone over that contract twice this week, and each time Jonathan had discovered something new to critique. She replied with a straightforward, "On it." At 6:30 in the morning, Isabel sat at her desk in the shining Mercer Enterprises tower, the lights still low across much of the floor. She would have to wait at least another hour before the next employee showed up. She cherished these serene moments, when she could immerse herself in her work without distraction, anticipating everything Jonathan would require before he even realized it. At 8 in the morning, with a decisive click, the elevator doors parted, revealing Jonathan Mercer, who entered with an air of confidence, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that likely exceeded her entire monthly rent. He walked by without a glance, his gaze fixed firmly on his phone screen. "Your coffee," Isabel said, joining him with a steaming mug in hand. "The revised Spencer contract is now on your desk. I've marked the modifications in Section 4 and included the early termination clause you referenced last week." Jonathan accepted the coffee, his gaze fixed elsewhere. "What about the investors from Hong Kong?" "The conference room has been arranged. The profiles are located in the folder on your desk, accompanied by discussion points derived from their past investments. Lunch has been arranged for delivery at 1 Wong Cars." He gave a slight nod, his gaze finally shifting to her. "The charity gala is scheduled for next week? Please convey my apologies. It's the occasion when you're being honored with the Urban Development Award," Isabel reminded him. "The media will be present, and the board explicitly stated, send Isabel." "She can handle it," Jonathan stated into his phone, addressing his executive assistant Marcus, who had just reached out. "She has a way with words." Isabel halted abruptly, caught in a moment of stillness. Did he really just nominate her to accept an award on his behalf? As though he could sense her inner musings, Jonathan finally met her gaze. "Surely you can manage it, can't you? Just the typical talk about dedication to the community, prospects for growth, and so on." He gestured with a flick of his wrist, brushing aside the matter at hand. "You've crafted plenty of those speeches to present one by now." Before she had a chance to reply, he stepped into his office, the door shutting quietly behind him. As the day wore on, Isabel found herself at her desk, gazing intently at the gala invitation. After 3 years under Jonathan Mercer's guidance, she had grown used to the feeling of being overlooked. She orchestrated his life with meticulous attention, foreseeing his needs and addressing challenges before they ever landed on his desk. She excelled in her role, truly remarkable, yet Jonathan perceived her merely as a mechanism, a part of his meticulously crafted system. "He's asking you to go and accept an award?" Marcus propped himself against her desk, an eyebrow arched in curiosity. In contrast to Isabel, Marcus was situated right in Jonathan's office, taking charge of the high-profile communications, while she oversaw the daily operations. "It seems that's quite rare, even for him," Marcus whispered. His friends were teasing him about it during lunch. Reynolds actually remarked, "What's next? Allowing her to take charge of your company?" Isabel felt a flush rise to her cheeks. What were his words? Marcus gave a nonchalant shrug. He merely chuckled, dismissing it as a trivial accolade, claiming he had more important matters to attend to. Clearly, it's just an insignificant accolade. For a man who possessed it all, An additional accolade held no significance. Yet for Isabel, who had lingered in his shadow for years, this felt entirely distinct. This was like taking the spotlight, even if just in his own corner. That evening, rather than heading directly home, Isabel paused at a boutique she usually overlooked. If she was set to represent Jonathan Mercer at the city's most esteemed business event, she certainly wouldn't opt for her typical department store outfit. She would execute it with precision. At last, she would be seen. The days preceding the gala flew by for Isabel in a whirlwind of activity. Amidst the chaos of managing Jonathan's hectic timetable and gearing up for her unforeseen chance to shine, she found herself with hardly a moment to catch her breath. The emerald green dress she had indulged in draped elegantly in her apartment, a quiet anticipation of the night ahead. On the evening of the gala, Isabel gazed into her bathroom mirror, barely able to identify her own reflection. The dress embraced every curve, revealing a silhouette often concealed by traditional business wear. After dedicating an hour to her makeup, she meticulously followed a tutorial that highlighted her brown eyes and accentuated her high cheekbones. Her typically utilitarian ponytail had given way to gentle waves that elegantly framed her face. Just an assistant, she murmured to her reflection, recalling Jonathan's scornful tone. This evening she would transcend those boundaries. The ballroom of the Maxwell Hotel sparkled with the presence of New York's high society. Business leaders, financiers, and property tycoons gathered under sparkling chandeliers, their combined fortunes likely rivaling the GDP of a small country. Typically, Isabel would have slipped in through a side door, clipboard at the ready, ensuring that every detail was just right for Jonathan's entrance. This evening, she strolled through the primary entrance, an invitation grasped firmly in her hand. Isabel Carter, speaking on behalf of Jonathan Mercer, informed the hostess, her voice exuding an unexpected confidence. All eyes were drawn to her as she moved through the throng. Some faces she recognized, men who had once overlooked her when she stood next to Jonathan, now doing double takes. Women who had previously brushed her off with courteous smiles now regarded her with intrigued gazes. "Isabel, is that really you?" Richard Donovan, a regular companion of Jonathan on the golf course, came over with a pair of champagne flutes in hand. "Your appearance has changed." She graciously accepted the champagne, a smile gracing her lips. Various situations required distinct clothing choices. Truly, his gaze held a moment longer than necessary. Turns out Jonathan was unable to attend. Mr. Mercer expresses his apologies. He had urgent matters to attend to. The falsehood flowed out effortlessly. For years, she had been stepping in for Jonathan whenever he was absent. His loss, Richard remarked with a smile that hinted at deeper implications beyond mere professional courtesy. "I would like to present a few individuals to you." In a penthouse across town, Jonathan Mercer savored a glass of 30-year-old scotch. The television was set to the local business channel, showcasing highlights from the gala event. He had planned to verify whether Mercer Enterprises was mentioned positively in the coverage before shifting his focus to more pressing issues. Instead, he found himself scowling at the screen as the camera swept across the room, capturing a fleeting view of Isabel in that captivating green dress, laughing at something Richard Donovan had just said. "What on earth is she wearing?" he murmured, extending his hand toward his phone. He began to type a message to Marcus, but then hesitated. What precisely was he about to express? That his assistant appeared too impressive at an event he had compelled her to join? He flung the phone away and cranked up the volume as the announcer spoke about the Urban Development Award. Isabel glided up the steps to the stage, her elegance catching him off guard. She navigated the office with a new sense of purpose, exuding poise and confidence. As she approached the podium, a smile graced her lips, and for an instant, Jonathan found himself unable to identify the woman who had been just steps away from his office for the past 3 years. With great pride, she began, "On behalf of Jonathan Mercer and everyone at Mercer Enterprises, I am honored to accept this award." Jonathan leaned forward, bracing himself for the familiar corporate spiel he had seen crafted countless times in the past. Jonathan Mercer sees buildings as entities that transcend mere steel and glass. They serve as the foundation upon which individuals build their lives. She continued. Each advancement ought to elevate not only the horizon but also the community it supports. Her words flowed with authenticity, not merely scripted lines. Her words flowed with certainty, as though she genuinely embraced the vision. The audience was enthralled. Jonathan was as well. As the broadcast shifted to a commercial break, Jonathan continued to gaze at the screen, the glass slipping from his grasp. An unsettling sensation twisted within him. Not entirely envy, not wholly remorse, but maybe an awakening to the fact that he had misjudged her capabilities. At the gala, Isabel found herself amidst a flurry of admirers and an array of business cards. Those who had previously overlooked her presence now found themselves enthusiastic to engage, to bond, to recall her name. A solitary figure lingered on the fringes, watching her with a keen and deliberate gaze. Philip Langford, the CEO of Langford Development Group and a persistent rival of Jonathan, bided his time until the throng surrounding Isabel diminished before making his move. It seems we have the pleasure of Miss Carter's company. His voice flowed effortlessly, and his handshake exuded confidence. The speech delivered was truly remarkable. Thank you, Mr. Langford. Isabel identified him without hesitation. Jonathan maintained a comprehensive dossier on each of his key competitors. Your discussion of Mercer's vision was filled with impressive enthusiasm. His eyes, sharp and discerning, examined her features. It's easy to think these could be your very own expressions. Isabel locked eyes with him. After 3 years at Mercer Enterprises, it feels like tonight is the first time anyone has truly noticed you. He presented her with his business card. I recognize possibilities that others overlook. Keep that in mind. As he turned to leave, Isabel glanced at the embossed card cradled in her hand, sensing that a profound change had occurred in her reality. This evening, she emerged from the darkness, and someone took notice. Isabel stepped into the office ahead of her usual schedule the morning after the gala, her thoughts still swirling with the excitement of the previous night. Philip Langford's business card lingered in her purse, its presence undeniably compelling. She attempted to concentrate on her morning routine, powering up her computer, reviewing Jonathan's schedule, and organizing the day's agenda. Yet she couldn't shake off the lingering sounds of conversations and compliments that surrounded her. At last, she was recognized, not merely as Jonathan Mercer's shadow, but as her own person. The sudden ring of her phone jolted her from her reverie. A number that remains unidentified. Isabel Carter here. Miss Carter, this is Philip Langford speaking. I trust this isn't an inconvenient time for my call. His voice flowed effortlessly, exuding assurance. Isabel adjusted her posture in the chair, casting a look toward Jonathan's vacant office. Absolutely not, Mr. Langford. How may I assist you? Last night left quite an impression on me. Your grace, your eloquence, your evident intellect. It's all squandered while you linger in Mercer's shadow. I'm quite pleased with my role at Mercer Enterprises. She responded instinctively, the reply refined and perfected. Langford let out a soft laugh. Are you? After 3 years of being an assistant, he has the audacity to send you to accept his award while he does what exactly? Sip scotch in his penthouse? Isabel's silence spoke volumes. Would you join me for breakfast tomorrow? He pressed on. I have an intriguing idea that I believe will capture your attention. Just as she was about to reply, the elevator doors slid open, and Jonathan stepped in, arriving earlier than he typically did. There was something in his expression that caused a knot to form in Isabel's stomach. I need to go, she said hurriedly. The Westfield Hotel, 8 a.m. Tomorrow, Langford remarked before ending the call. Do not allow your allegiance to someone who fails to appreciate you to hinder your progress. Isabel placed her phone on the desk just as Jonathan approached. His eyes, often detached, held a depth she seldom witnessed. Good morning, she said with a calm demeanor. Rather than his typical absent-minded nod, he focused intently on her expression. This morning, you're making headlines in the business sections. He casually placed a newspaper on her desk. There she stood, graciously accepting the award, her vibrant green dress a striking contrast to the monochrome tuxedos surrounding her. The headline proclaimed, "Mercer's Hidden Gem Dazzles at Industry Gala." She spoke with caution, adhering to your typical speech structure. "I maintained my attention on Mercer Enterprises and its influence on the community." The speech was adequate. He interrupted her, his voice giving nothing away. "Your performance was commendable." It might have been the most sincere acknowledgement he had ever offered her. Just as she was about to reply, Marcus showed up, tablet in hand. He informed Jonathan that the Henderson Group is in the conference room. "Congratulations, Isabel. You're certainly the center of attention in the office today." Jonathan's jaw clenched ever so slightly. Let's keep things in perspective. It was a single address at a solitary occasion. His dismissal hurt more than it ought to have. In the end, what could she have anticipated? That single night would transform 3 years of being ignored. The day unfolded in a whirlwind of discussions and conversations. As the day began to wane, Isabel found clarity in her choice. She was set to meet with Langford. What harm could come from lending an ear? By 6:30 p.m., the majority of the office had emptied out. As Isabel gathered her belongings, Jonathan stepped out of his office, his demeanor oddly disquieted. "Are you still around?" he inquired, pausing at her workstation. As she wrapped things up, she couldn't shake the feeling of Langford's card pressing against her purse, a constant reminder of its presence. "The schedule for tomorrow has been revised. The meeting with legal has been rescheduled to 2:30 p.m., rather than the original time of 11 a.m. He nodded, but a moment of uncertainty lingered. "Last night you certainly captured a great deal of interest." There was an unmistakable quality in his tone that compelled her to glance up. She acknowledged that it was a pleasant shift. "Receiving recognition. Did you relish the spotlight?" The inquiry carried a sharpness to it. Isabel straightened, a wave of exhaustion washing over her as she resolved to no longer downplay her worth. "I relished the feeling of being noticed." A fleeting gaze lingered, a quiet tension weaving itself in the space between them. "Today I received a call," she said, choosing to be straightforward. "By Philip Langford." Jonathan's face grew stern. "Langford, what was his intention?" "I believe they are considering offering me a position." She observed his expression intently. "He wishes to meet tomorrow morning." "So you're going?" His tone carried an air of nonchalance that masked deeper intentions. "I'm contemplating it." Jonathan's laughter was brief and icy. "He's merely leveraging you to reach me. That's the way Langford functions. Or perhaps he saw something in me that you haven't taken the time to notice in 3 years." Isabel replied, surprising herself with her audacity. A flicker of pain flashed across Jonathan's face, anger momentarily breaking through before his features settled into an impenetrable mask. "If that's your desire, feel free to proceed." She had anticipated his objections, the way he would highlight every reason leaving could be a blunder, reminding her of the lessons learned at Mercer Enterprises, the prospects that lay before her, and perhaps, just perhaps, recognizing her worth. Instead, he offered her nothing, merely those lifeless words. "If that's your desire, feel free to proceed." Isabel collected her belongings, an unfamiliar emptiness expanding within her heart. "Sleep well, Jonathan." As she made her way to the elevator, she lingered, hoping for him to reach out, to utter a word, anything, to show that her possible exit held significance. She felt the elevator doors slide shut behind her. He never did. The following morning, Isabel found herself seated opposite Philip Langford at a quaint corner table in the sophisticated restaurant of the Westfield Hotel. He grinned at her from behind the edge of his coffee cup. "You were never meant to live in someone else's shadow, Isabel. Collaborate with me. You will receive the role that is rightfully yours, Director of Operations. Increase your current earnings threefold, gain true influence, and above all," he leaned in, acknowledging your skills. The proposal was breathtaking in its kindness. Yet beyond that, it mirrored all that Jonathan had overlooked. "Why should it be me?" she inquired with a hint of hesitation. "Because I see the possibilities," Langford responded, "and because removing you from Mercer would irritate him to no end." At the very least, he was transparent regarding his intentions. I refuse to be a mere piece in your game. Absolutely not. You're a wise choice. He slid a folder across the table. The agreement you have in place. Use the weekend to reflect on it. Isabel gazed at the folder, her future now feeling both real and daunting. Isabel made her way back to Mercer Enterprises following her breakfast with Langford, the contract folder carefully stowed away in her bag. The once familiar office, her haven for 3 years, now seemed altered, diminished in size, and imbued with a sense of transience. As she neared her desk, she caught sight of Jonathan by the window in his office, phone held to his ear. His stance was tense, his unoccupied hand tightly balled at his side. There was an unsettling feeling in the air. She meticulously arranged the day's files until he appeared, his expression etched with tension. The Roberts deal is falling apart, he stated bluntly. They are withdrawing. The agreement with Roberts. Half a year of discussions. The focal point of this quarter's anticipated expansion. Isabel swiftly grabbed her tablet. What transpired? Do we need to schedule an emergency meeting with? Already handled it, Jonathan interrupted her. Marcus is meticulously organizing every detail. Isabel's eyes fluttered momentarily. Is that you, Marcus? That was her duty. It had been a span of 3 years. I see, she murmured, placing the tablet gently on the table. Do you require anything further from me? Jonathan gazed at her, an enigmatic glimmer dancing in his eyes. How did you find your breakfast? Thus he was aware. Naturally, he did. With a thoughtful demeanor, she responded with clarity. So, did Langford present you with an irresistible proposal? His tone was sharp, nearly derisive. Isabel inhaled deeply. This moment had been in the making for days, no years. Every unrecognized effort, the tireless hours spent in silence, the offhand rejections. She stated calmly that he had offered her a director position. Increase my current salary 3-fold. My personal squad. Jonathan's laugh was brief and tinged with bitterness. So, you trust him? Langford would go to great lengths to lure away one of my employees, driven purely by a desire to undermine me. One of your employees, Isabel echoed, the words leaving a bitter aftertaste. Isn't that all I am to you? Merely another entry on your corporate list. What other roles could you possibly take on? His words struck hard, lacking any trace of feeling. The inquiry lingered in the atmosphere surrounding them, jarring in its sincerity. What more truly? Did she naively believe she held a significant role, a reliable confidant, a collaborator in the creation of his empire? Nothing, it seems, she finally stated, her voice unwavering despite the constriction in her throat. That is the reason I'm accepting Langford's offer. It was in that precise instant that she finally made her choice. The words astonished her just as much as they appeared to astonish him. Jonathan's expression turned completely neutral, a clear indication that he was grappling with something unsettling. If that's what you desire, proceed. He echoed his words from yesterday as though reciting from a script. Isabel lingered, yearning for the moment he would break the silence, perhaps to recognize their 3 years together, to invite her to remain by his side. He pivoted back to his office, casually remarking over his shoulder that the standard notice period is 2 weeks. HR, your paperwork will be processed. That was the end. There was no debate, no alternative proposal, not even a cursory acknowledgement of regret at your departure. Isabel sat at her desk, enveloped in an unusual sense of numbness. She had anticipated experiencing either a sense of validation or deep sorrow. Instead, she felt an emptiness, as if something essential had been removed from her very core. As the hours passed, news of her resignation circulated among the office staff. Colleagues approached her desk, their faces a mix of surprise and hesitant congratulations. By the afternoon, HR had sent her transition paperwork, marked by a brisk efficiency. At 5:30, Jonathan departed for a dinner meeting, leaving her in silence. Isabel lingered into the evening, meticulously arranging files and crafting transition documents. She refused to abandon Mercer Enterprises in disarray, regardless of the CEO's indifference to her exit. The subsequent fortnight unfolded with a painful sense of ordinary routine. Jonathan acted as though everything remained the same, assigning tasks and issuing requests with his typical swift precision. Yet he funneled the majority of inquiries through Marcus, as if he were already removing her from his work life. On her last day, Isabel walked in to discover a small group of colleagues gathered around her desk, a farewell card and cake awaiting her presence. Jonathan's absence was palpable, his office door firmly shut while she graciously received hugs and well wishes. It was only in the late afternoon that his door finally creaked open. Isabel observed him as he made his way to the elevator, not casting a glance in her direction, vanishing inside without uttering a single farewell. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the last of the guests departed, Isabel carefully gathered her cherished belongings, placing them into a modest box. 3 years of her existence condensed into a space smaller than a shoebox. A backup pair of heels, a touch-up makeup kit, a selection of framed photographs. She set her security badge and company phone on the vacant desk, an odd sense of closure accompanying the action. Just as she was about to exit, Jonathan unexpectedly emerged in the doorway of his office, catching her off guard. "You're still here," he remarked, a hint of astonishment in his voice. Isabel responded, raising her petite box as she wrapped things up. "My successor begins on Monday. All the information she requires can be found in the transition folder." Jonathan nodded with a certain rigidity, his gaze avoiding hers entirely. "Excellent." A palpable stillness lingered in the air between them. At last, Isabel reached her breaking point. "Is that all? 3 years and that's all you can offer? Just good?" A fleeting expression crossed his features. Remorse. Exasperation. She was uncertain. "What is it you wish for me to express, Isabel? Well done on landing your new position. Thank you for your dedication." His voice carried a sharpness she seldom encountered. "Individuals enter and exit the realm of commerce. It's not about you." The words struck her with the force of a tangible impact. "It's not about you." Certainly not, for Jonathan Mercer had always viewed her not as an individual, but merely as a role to fulfill. "Farewell, Jonathan," she murmured softly, gliding by him as she made her way to the elevator. He remained silent, offering no objections or calls. The final image etched in her mind as the elevator doors slid shut was Jonathan, solitary in the vacant office, his gaze fixed on her departure. 2 days later, Isabel embarked on her new journey at Langford Development Group, resolute in her decision to move forward without glancing back. Jonathan Mercer's office was a whirlwind of disorder. 3 weeks after Isabel's departure, the meticulously curated structure of his professional life had unraveled into a cascade of mounting frustrations. "Could you please tell me the location of the Henderson file?" Jonathan insisted, sifting through the pile of documents on his desk. The new assistant, Emma, was it Emily? Lingered anxiously in the entrance. "I think it's with legal, sir. It was requested for review yesterday. Why was I not made aware?" I sent you an email," she hesitated. Jonathan glanced at his phone. 57 unread emails stared at him, a silent challenge waiting to be addressed. He had never felt the urge to constantly monitor his emails before. Isabel had meticulously sifted through everything, presenting only what demanded his urgent focus. "The Wilson meeting starts in 10 minutes, Marcus reminded him, peering through the doorway. Thompson reached out once more regarding the zoning matter. Jonathan massaged his temples, sensing the onset of a headache that had become all too familiar. "Rearrange Wilson's schedule. Inform Thompson that I will reach out to him tomorrow." Marcus scowled. "Wilson is already in the building, and Thompson insists it's urgent. The deadline for the permit is set for Friday." Previously, these issues would have been discreetly settled long before they came to his attention. Isabel might have taken steps to mend the situation with Wilson, possibly suggesting they extend their meeting to include lunch as a gesture of goodwill for any inconvenience caused. She had likely prepared the response to Thompson's permit concerns, needing just Jonathan's signature to finalize it. Yet, Isabel was absent. "All right, just give me 5 minutes," Jonathan snapped, turning back to the chaos on his desk. The days melded into one another, shrouded in a fog of overlooked deadlines, neglected details, and mounting issues. It wasn't that Emma, her name was certainly Emma, lacked skill. She possessed the necessary qualifications and had a strong desire to satisfy. Yet she was not Isabel. She was unaware of his needs, unable to challenge his choices, and struggled to grasp his shorthand or his emotions. Jonathan reassured himself that it was merely a question of time. A fresh routine would take shape. The interruption was brief. Yet 3 weeks had gone by and no progress had been made. The void left by Isabel became increasingly apparent with each passing day. "You ought to give her a call," Lucas proposed during dinner that evening. Lucas Chun had been Jonathan's friend since their college days, one of the rare individuals who could speak candidly to him without fear of repercussions. "Whom shall I call?" Jonathan inquired, fully aware of whom Lucas was referring to. Lucas let out an exasperated sigh. "The monarch of the United Kingdom. What are your thoughts, Isabel? Your previous confidant who seemingly managed your entire enterprise while you basked in the accolades." "She wasn't in charge of my operation," Jonathan snapped. "I have no need to reach out to her. Emma possesses all the necessary skills." "Her name is Eliza," Lucas corrected with a smirk. "That's not the focus. Your company isn't crumbling due to the shortcomings of your new assistant. It's unraveling because you depended on Isabel for more than mere administrative tasks, and you're too proud to acknowledge it." Jonathan gazed contemplatively into his glass of whiskey. "She departed. Individuals frequently transition from one job to another." "She departed because you pushed her away," Lucas retorted. "And now you find yourself here, feeling downcast while she flourishes at Langford." "I came across the announcement regarding their latest community development initiative. Can you guess who's at the forefront of it all?" Jonathan had witnessed it as well. The polished image of Isabel, exuding professionalism and confidence, positioned next to Langford at a press conference. The announcement had stirred something deep within him, an emotion he was unwilling to identify. "Do you find yourself longing for her presence?" Lucas insisted. Jonathan let out a derisive laugh. "She was merely my assistant. So what's with the obsession over her career choices, as if you're still hung up on her?" The inquiry lingered, strikingly precise and unsettling. Jonathan found himself at a loss for words. Later that night, in the solitude of his penthouse, Jonathan poured himself another drink and opened his laptop, ready to dive into the world of words. The website for the Langford Development Group has successfully loaded. Isabel's professional biography is now prominently displayed under the Leadership Team section as the Director of Community Engagement and Operations. In the photo, her smile radiated a different kind of warmth, exuding confidence and authenticity that he hadn't noticed during their encounters at the office. Did she find more joy in that place? Did Langford recognize the value of what he had in her? The notion ignited an unforeseen surge of fury within him. Langford, of all individuals, his enduring adversary, perpetually on the hunt for vulnerabilities to take advantage of. Was this really everything it amounted to? A competitive landscape? Or was there something deeper to the emptiness that had settled in his chest since Isabel departed? Jonathan snapped the laptop shut, unsettled by the path his mind had taken. He was not one to linger on shifts in staff. He wasn't the kind of person to feel a sense of longing for others. In his realm, connections were merely exchanges, valuable until they ceased to be. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. His company faced challenges in the absence of her adept leadership. His days stretched on, filled with increasing frustration. His achievements seemed devoid of fulfillment, and if he were to confront the truth within himself, a rare occurrence for Jonathan Mercer, it wasn't solely about the upheaval in his career. He longed for her presence, the subtle mastery. Her ability to sense his emotions and adapt seamlessly was remarkable. The understated objections to his choices when she believed he was erring. For 3 years, she had been an unwavering presence in his life. He had assumed it would always be there, underappreciated her. The revelation struck him with an unforeseen intensity. A misstep had occurred, an important one. Jonathan Mercer had constructed his dominion on the foundation of correctness. Concerning real estate, concerning investments, concerning individuals, being incorrect felt like uncharted ground, particularly being mistaken about something so essential. He had misjudged Isabel. It is misguided to overlook her worth. It was a mistake to allow her to leave. The inquiry posed was, what actions would he take in response to it? Jonathan gazed at the shimmering city lights, a choice beginning to take shape. He had decided that silence would no longer be his companion. He was on his way to meet her. Isabel positioned herself at the forefront of the conference table, encircled by Langford's development team. Just 6 weeks into her new role, she was already at the helm of significant projects. Her contributions are appreciated. Her concepts put into action. The designs for the community center appear quite promising, she remarked, as she perused the architect's renderings. However, I would like to incorporate additional green areas. The community requires it. Nods of agreement circled the table. From the very beginning, these individuals held her perspective in high regard. It was an experience unlike anything she had encountered at Mercer Enterprises. That's a brilliant idea, Philip Langford remarked from the doorway, having quietly entered during the presentation. Isabel possesses an extraordinary ability to perceive the needs of the community. That's the reason I brought her on board. The praise ought to have been uplifting. Instead, it created an unusual emptiness in her chest. Langford's compliments were often laced with a sense of strategy, as though every kind word was a calculated investment he anticipated returns from. As the meeting came to a close, her assistant, Jenna, entered the room visibly flustered. "Miss Carter, I apologize for the interruption," she murmured softly. "A visitor has arrived to meet you." Isabel checked her schedule and said, "I don't have any appointments this afternoon." Jenna inched forward. "My name is Jonathan Mercer. He's adamant about meeting you immediately." All sounds faded away. All at Langford Development were aware of the past that linked the companies, and consequently the connection between Isabel and her previous employer. Philip Langford's eyebrows arched in surprise. "Jonathan Mercer has arrived." He appeared nearly thrilled at the possibility. Within the confines of our building, Isabel felt her heart pounding fiercely against her ribs. After 6 weeks of silence, he suddenly appears without warning. "I'll take care of it," she stated, maintaining a calm tone even as a storm of feelings swirled within her. Langford smiled, though the warmth didn't quite touch his eyes. "Feel free to make use of your office space." I had no idea Mercer offered house visits. The journey to her office seemed to stretch on endlessly. What might Jonathan be seeking? Could there have been an issue with her transition documents? An incomplete project she had left behind? Or was this related to Langford's recent acquisition, the riverfront property Jonathan had been coveting for months? On her arrival at the office, she found him there, positioned by the window, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape. He pivoted as she walked in, and for a fleeting instant, Isabel was taken aback by his altered appearance. He remained impeccably attired, yet there was an unsettling quality about him. The once confident sharpness in his eyes had given way to a more uncertain glimmer. "Jonathan," she said, gently shutting the door behind her. This caught him off guard. He nodded, grappling for the right words, a rare moment for someone who typically had the perfect response in professional settings. He finally offered, "You look well. What is it that you seek, Jonathan?" Isabel felt no inclination for casual conversation, especially given how they had parted ways. He let out a breath, as though he were compelling himself to utter phrases that felt foreign. "I made mistakes in many areas." The straightforward confession took her by surprise. In the span of 3 years, she had never once witnessed Jonathan Mercer concede he was mistaken about anything. She folded her arms across her chest. Defensive. Provide clear details. "Regarding the lack of appreciation for you," he persisted, the words appearing to weigh heavily on him. "About considering you merely as my helper. Regarding my failure to intervene when I ought to have." Isabel gazed at him, attempting to bridge the gap between this man and the icy, indifferent superior who had silently observed her departure. What brings you here at this moment? 6 weeks have passed. 6 weeks. He corrected himself, saying 4 days, and then a flush of embarrassment crossed his face. I assure you I haven't been keeping track. Against her better judgment, a hint of amusement danced across her features. Absolutely not. Jonathan raked his fingers through his hair, a familiar sign of exasperation she had witnessed many times before. The organization is crumbling in your absence. And there it stood, the true explanation. Same old routine. So this is a recruitment pitch? She inquired, a sense of disappointment weighing heavily in her stomach. Are you asking me to return and sort out your chaos? Absolutely not. His reply came swiftly, resolute. That's not my purpose for being here. So what's the reason? He expressed his longing, saying, I miss you. The words spilled forth, as if he were unable to contain them any longer. More than just your creation. Me. Isabel sensed her meticulously built facade begin to falter. This was the final revelation she could have anticipated. Do you long for my presence? She reiterated with deliberate slowness. The individual who held no personal significance for you. He flinched at the sting of his own words being hurled back at him. That wasn't my intention. I was attempting to shield myself. From where? From acknowledging the extent of my dependence on you. How deeply I craved your presence. His voice lowered. How much I continue to accomplish. Isabel found herself ensnared in a delicate balance of optimism and doubt. What precisely are you trying to convey, Jonathan? After a moment of uncertainty, he appeared to come to a conclusion. I no longer wish to be that man, he stated plainly. The individual who underestimates the value of others. The individual who fails to recognize what is immediately before him until it has vanished. There was an unexpected quality in his voice, a rawness she had never encountered, that caused Isabel to stop in her tracks. This wasn't the carefully crafted allure he employed in discussions. This was genuine. What is it that you seek from me? She inquired gently. He responded with silence. I won't suggest that you resign from your position. I won't act as if I merit another opportunity. However, I felt compelled to express this. I must admit that I was mistaken. Isabel observed him intently, looking for any signs of weakness in his typically unyielding facade. For the first time, Jonathan Mercer faced her not as a commanding CEO, but as a man confronting his errors. A figure revealing the depths hidden beneath authority. Perhaps, just perhaps, that was sufficient to begin the process of reconstructing what had been lost. She inhaled deeply. I require a moment, a gentle acknowledgement. I can provide that for you. As he prepared to depart, a question that had haunted her thoughts for weeks finally slipped out. Jonathan. He paused at the threshold, anticipation hanging in the air. I never wanted you to change who you are, she said softly. I simply wished for you to notice me. A faint smile graced his lips, tentative yet sincere. I understand now with greater clarity than before. Once he departed, Isabel remained at her desk, gazing intently at the door. 6 weeks prior, she had turned her back, certain that she held no significance to him beyond her role within his organization. Now everything had changed, leaving her with uncertainties she didn't know how to resolve. Contemplating her future, pondering Langford, reflecting on Jonathan, and considering her true desires. Isabel gazed intently at the contract resting on her desk, Philip Langford's signature strikingly prominent at the bottom. The board had granted final approval for her project, the community development project. This ought to have been a moment of victory. Instead, her thoughts lingered on Jonathan's surprise visit from 3 days prior. Congratulations, Langford announced, stepping into her office doorway. The board was truly impressed, especially by the speed at which you've built connections with the neighborhood council. Thank you, Isabel responded instinctively, sliding the contract into a folder. Langford examined her features closely. It appears you have been preoccupied recently. Is everything okay? Following Jonathan's visit, Isabel found herself reflecting on the two men, their approaches to leadership, their principles, and how each treated her. While Jonathan had been blunt yet clear, Langford was enthusiastic yet strategic. His praises were always intentional. His generosity was never without its conditions. With unwavering attention to the project timeline, she wove her deception effortlessly. A great deal needs to be arranged, Langford acknowledged, though his gaze lingered with doubt. What was the purpose of Mercer's visit? To clarify some transition details, she mentioned, the deception flowing more effortlessly than anticipated. Following a span of 6 weeks? Not probable. Langford rested against the doorframe, a figure caught in a moment of contemplation. He desires your return, doesn't he? Isabel maintained a calm demeanor. That topic wasn't brought up in our conversation. Isabel, his voice took on an edge. I brought you here for your skills, indeed, but also because snatching you away from Mercer was a triumph I relished. If you're thinking about coming back, I'm not. She cut in, though the words rang hollow even to her own ears. Jonathan and I just had an honest conversation. That concludes everything. Langford appeared to embrace this, his stance easing. Excellent. Your worth is immeasurable and should never be underestimated. Once he departed, Isabel settled back into her chair. Significant, the term resonated within her thoughts. But beneficial to whom and for what purpose? To Langford, as a strategic advantage in his competition with Jonathan. To Jonathan, now that he understood what he had forfeited, or to herself, to her own aspirations and desires. That evening, Isabel strolled through the city park, seeking a moment of solitude to gather her thoughts. The last 6 weeks at Langford Development had provided her with all that she believed she desired. Acknowledgement, power, esteem. Suddenly, her phone vibrated, revealing a message from Jonathan. Just a gentle nudge to see how things are going. Clear and straightforward, a stark contrast to the intense communications she had been accustomed to from him in her role as his assistant. As she strolled, recollections from her time at Mercer Enterprises emerged. Not merely the irritations and rejections, but instances she had almost let slip away. Jonathan brought her coffee during a late-night project crunch. His quiet diligence following a particularly successful negotiation. There was the time he noticed her cough and sent her home early, an uncharacteristic hint of concern in his voice. Fleeting instances, often eclipsed by a lifetime of unnoticed existence, yet undeniably genuine. Her phone vibrated once more, this time from Langford. Please review the press release by morning, as you will be the representative for this project. The difference was striking. Jonathan had requested nothing. Langford persisted in his requests, all the while presenting chances. A span of 3 days evolved into a full week. Isabel thrived in her new role, yet she grew more and more uneasy with Langford's approach. His community project, her project, appeared promising at first glance, but as she delved deeper, she uncovered shortcuts being taken and a disregard for community feedback in pursuit of financial gain. When she voiced her concerns, Langford brushed them aside. This is a matter of business, Isabel. We navigate the essential trade-offs to achieve our goals. It resonated with an unsettling familiarity, reminiscent of words Jonathan might have uttered in the past. The distinction was that she now felt Jonathan could be receptive if she stood her ground. Following a notably exasperating meeting, Isabel made her way toward Mercer Enterprises. It was never part of her intentions. Her feet effortlessly guided her to that place. The security guard identified her right away. Miss Carter, it's a pleasure to see you. Is he available? She inquired, astonished by her own curiosity. Mr. Mercer, without a doubt. Burning the midnight oil once again. The ascent in the elevator to the top floor was reminiscent of a journey through time. As the doors swung open, she found herself half anticipating the sight of her own self at the familiar desk, deftly overseeing Jonathan's realm. Instead, a frazzled woman, Eliza, not Emma, was hurriedly typing away, encircled by towering piles of documents. How may I assist you today? She inquired, failing to recognize Isabel. I'm here to meet Jonathan. Do you have a scheduled meeting? Mr. Mercer has a lot on his plate, and it's perfectly fine, Eliza. Jonathan's voice echoed from the threshold of his office. He remained in place, astonishment clear upon his features. Isabel has an uncanny ability to perceive my presence at all times. Eliza glanced back and forth, a mix of confusion and agreement on her face. Jonathan motioned for Isabel to enter his office, then shut the door softly behind them. The room was more chaotic than she recalled, with papers piled carelessly and a collection of coffee cups gathering dust on the side table. "Apologies for the disorder," he remarked, tracking her line of sight. "Your absence is something I'm still coming to terms with." Isabel approached the window, gazing at the well-known panorama of the city. "The community center Langford is developing would have found a perfect home in your building. I understand. I made an attempt to obtain that property." She pivoted to confront him. "What held you back?" "Honestly, once you departed I found myself unfocused. Failed to submit by the due date. The entry came at a price for him." She noticed it in the tension etched around his eyes. "Jonathan," she started with caution. "What you expressed last week." "I truly meant every word," he interjected. "However, my intention in Langford was not to undermine you or reclaim what was once yours. I arrived here to ensure you understand the reality." Isabel observed him closely, seeking the shrewd entrepreneur she had been familiar with for so long. Instead, she perceived an individual transformed, one who had experienced humility and gained profound insights through adversity. She spoke slowly, revealing that she holds a favorable position at Langford. "Power. Acknowledgement. I understand. You truly deserve it." His voice carried a genuine quality. "I truly hope he recognizes the value of what he possesses." The question lingered in the air, unvoiced yet palpable between them. Did Langford genuinely appreciate her? Or was it merely her significance in his competition with Jonathan that mattered to him? Isabel finally spoke up. "I didn't come here about the job. So what brought you here?" A straightforward inquiry that leads to a complex response. What was her purpose for being here? To determine the authenticity of Jonathan's words? To juxtapose what she had abandoned with what she had discovered? To validate her increasing doubt that although Langford had bestowed upon her a title, he failed to recognize her worth beyond the benefits she provided him? She confessed that she had come to find out if your words held any truth. As Jonathan approached, his demeanor shifted, revealing a vulnerability she had seldom seen before. "Indeed, Isabel, I perceive your presence." For the very first time, she found herself believing him. 3 months later, Isabel found herself at a corner table in a serene cafe, observing the flow of people on the bustling street beyond. The coffee shop sat perfectly between Mercer Enterprises and Langford Development, an ideal setting for this gathering. She glanced at her watch. Jonathan had a punctuality that was deeply rooted in him, a trait established long before she entered his life. As the clock struck noon, the door swung open, and he entered, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed on her. "Apologies for my tardiness," he remarked, easing into the chair opposite her. The meeting of the Transit Authority extended beyond the expected duration. Isabel arched an eyebrow at the Transit Authority. "When did you start going to community planning meetings?" A subtle smile graced his lips. "After I determined that certain matters deserved my personal focus." The waitress delivered his customary black coffee, without him needing to place an order. He continued to visit here frequently during that time. "How is the Richardson project coming along?" he inquired, alluding to her most recent endeavor at Langford's company. "It was indeed a challenge," Isabel confessed. "Langford aims to cut back on the affordable housing aspect to boost profits. Yet I've successfully persuaded the board that it's a valuable investment for fostering community goodwill." Jonathan nodded, a flicker of satisfaction crossing his face. "He's fortunate to have you standing up for him in those struggles." The straightforward recognition brought her comfort. Just 3 months prior, the idea of receiving such acknowledgement from him would have felt utterly unattainable. Following their encounter in his office, Isabel returned to Langford Development with newfound clarity. She had not given up. The projects she had initiated held great significance for her, and she was resolute in her commitment to them. However, she had set stronger boundaries with Langford, resisting his more profit-focused choices and advocating for ethical development practices. To her surprise, he had largely embraced her insights, acknowledging that her community-oriented strategy offered advantages he had not foreseen. In the meantime, Jonathan had undergone a transformation as well. Not in a dramatic way. He remained assertive, maintaining a sharp focus on outcomes, yet his approach revealed a nuanced transformation in viewpoint. He had reorganized his executive team, elevating a number of previously unnoticed employees into roles of leadership. He had put into action numerous community engagement strategies that Isabel had championed for years. In a remarkable turn of events, he started attending neighborhood meetings for his projects in person, actively engaging with concerns instead of delegating to representatives. "How is Eliza doing?" Isabel inquired, gently sipping her latte. With a wry smile, Jonathan confessed that she had given notice the previous week. The position was described as overly demanding. "That's the third assistant in just 3 months. Actually, it's the fourth." Jonathan appeared a bit sheepish. "It seems that satisfying me is quite the challenge." Isabel chuckled softly. "Is that so?" Their weekly lunches started as cautious catch-ups following Isabel's visit to his office that day. No employment opportunities available. No efforts made to bring her back. Two individuals exploring the complexities of an evolving connection. "I have a proposition," Jonathan declared, placing his coffee cup on the table. "Not an employment opportunity," he clarified hastily, noticing her reaction. "Partnership. I am all ears." The revitalization of the waterfront. Mercer Enterprises claimed the northern section, while Langford took the southern. The city seeks a unified strategy for the whole region. Isabel gave a slight nod. She had anticipated this problem coming to light. "So, you expect me to persuade Langford to embrace your vision?" No, Jonathan caught her off guard. "Let's collaborate on crafting a proposal together. A solution that aligns the goals of both businesses and the requirements of the community." Isabel examined his features, searching for the fierce determination that had characterized his professional interactions for years. Instead, she discovered something unexpected, an openness to finding common ground, to work together. "Why?" she inquired with a straightforward tone. "Your guidance has shown me that true progress transcends mere profit margins. They focus on crafting meaningful environments." He paused. "Collaborating with you, even from a distance, is far more rewarding than opposing you." The confession lingered in the air, sincere in a manner their working relationship had never experienced before. "I'll have a word with Langford," she concluded at last. "He may not appreciate it, but he will recognize the benefits for the business." "Thank you." Jonathan paused, then continued. "This isn't solely about work, you realize." Isabel sensed her heart race. "Could you clarify what you mean?" "These midday meals." He gestured between them, indicating their connection. "We are more than just ex-colleagues engaging in professional matters." She nodded in agreement, her voice barely above a whisper. "We are not." Their essence remained undefined. Absolutely friends. However, another situation was unfolding. Something neither had foreseen when she turned her back on Mercer Enterprises 4 months prior. "So what exactly are we, Jonathan?" she inquired, daring in a manner she had never been as his aide. He pondered her question thoughtfully. Two individuals navigating their way through challenges, free from the constraints of labels or power dynamics. Isabel beamed. "I appreciate that definition." Their tale unfolded not through grand gestures or heartfelt declarations. Two individuals, entwined in a complex past, navigating their journey toward a fresh, authentic connection. He proposed taking it one step at a time. She nodded, extending her hand across the table to lightly brush against his. Progress unfolds gradually. They had their flaws. Jonathan would remain assertive and intent. Isabel would continue to confront him when necessary. Yet, at that moment, there existed a shared respect, authentic admiration, and the possibility of discovering something neither had anticipated. As they departed the cafe, strolling together under the warm autumn sun, Isabel understood that often the most meaningful beginnings arose not from grand transformations, but from the clarity of truly seeing one another. imperfections, virtues, and everything in between. At times, that sufficed. You've just delved into the tale of Isabel and Jonathan, a narrative of change, acknowledgement, and fresh starts. Their unexpected developments serve as a reminder that we often crave recognition for our authentic selves, rather than merely being valued for our roles in others' narratives. If this narrative resonated with you, please share in the comments what moved you the most and from which country you're viewing this video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more narratives that delve into intricate connections and personal growth like this one. Your involvement enables us to keep delivering content that resonates and prompts reflection. Which country are you in as you follow the journey of Isabel and Jonathan? Share your thoughts with us in the comments.